Welcome to another episode of Steady Lads. As usual, we have Thiccy, junior busboy at Scimitar Capital. We have Taiki, the humble farmer. We have Justin here, the CEO of Astaria, and myself, Jordy, the CIO of Selene and chief alchemist at Mantle. So it's been quite a week. We're starting to see a little bit of volatility. Justin, how have you been spending the last days?
Yeah, I've had an amazing few days. So Coinbase Ventures held a summit here in Malibu, which is pretty close by to me in Los Angeles, and it's just a very inspiring few days. Getting to meet Brian Armstrong, meet these other amazing builders, hear what Coinbase is excited about and what other people are excited about. I think like if you spend a lot of your time interacting with crypto folks on Twitter or just like digitally, you don't remember how much is actually getting built that's really innovative and really special and really cool. And so going to things like this is like really nice for recharging your conviction in the crypto space and like believing that, we're actually here for a reason. There's actually something here. And it's not just number go up, number go down. So I had an amazing time.
How many of you guys watched the documentary, the Coinbase documentary?
I haven't watched it.
I've seen it. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I mean they tried to charge people. There was like a cost when they first released it, so they were asking you to pay to watch their own propaganda, which I found a little bit bizarre. I think after 6 months they eventually released it free, so it's free now on YouTube, and I watched it a couple weeks ago. Um, it's definitely very favorable to the regime type of documentary, but it was cool. It was cool to see how a company like this, one of the most important companies in the space got built, and I liked some of the behind the scenes co-founder stuff with Fred, and then he goes to Paradigm, but he's still like involved in the. It was interesting. Would more people have seen it if it wasn't like pay to play?
The doc was awesome. I'd recommend people spend the $4 or $5 on Amazon Prime to watch it. It was great, and I think based on getting to chat with Brian for like quite a bit of time over this summit, like I actually think it portrayed him pretty well. I can confidently say he's an extremely nice person. He's very down to earth, and it's just amazing to get to talk to someone that's gone through this journey of starting a company from nothing when no one believed in Bitcoin, right? There was nothing else in the crypto space to taking a company public, and what that life journey is like and how that changes his experience. And yeah, it was just amazing to pick his brain on that.
Awesome. Yeah, he does seem very down to earth. I've never met him, but you know who else seems down to earth? Picky. I mean, normally he's got some Japanese robe, but today he's got the trucker hat. Is this like from a marijuana store, or what's going on, Picky? What's this outfit?
Well, that stuff. I just didn't. I just woke up, so my hair is all messed. So I just had to wear a hat.
All right, seems very down to earth. Picky, have you been trading these insane Bitcoin ETF news? I know everyone's wondering because normally, like, you have a house alarm that goes off whenever there's like a headline like this. Were you like jumping on the trend? Did you get caught on the false news?
I actually woke up like pretty late that day, and it was at like 29.5. I actually didn't trade it that well. And I slept through it. Well, I saw it. I saw it go to 30.5, and I saw the tweet, and I was like, okay, it's probably bullshit, but like, you never know. So yeah, no participation on that move from Scimitar. Yeah, I didn't buy it, but like, yeah, I didn't trade it.
Yeah, I had a question to you guys because I feel like the price action in the Bitcoin, like, or the price action of Bitcoin is pretty interesting because, I mean, like Thicky said, like, I mean, it was bullshit, right? It's like, this Cointelegraph intern just clicked send, and, sent the price up 10% and whatnot. But if you look at the Ripple candle, when Ripple won its case against the SEC, Bitcoin pumped and then it retraced its entire movement in 24 hours. And then a couple weeks later, the Grayscale news, right? When they won its case against the SEC, Bitcoin pumped, and then within 48 hours, it retraced. But obviously, I mean, this is bullshit news, but Bitcoin has retained its gains. It hasn't retraced. So I feel like, is there like some trend shift? Like, is the tape changing to, bullish? There's like this theory around, okay, like now the market is going to front run, the actual Bitcoin ETF launch. Do you guys actually believe in that? Or do you think that, it's just like shorts getting blown up, and, like markets are going to just retrace in the next couple of weeks?
I think you're right to pinpoint the fact that it hasn't fully retraced, and Bitcoin has been healthy ever since that fake news. And from a game theory standpoint, it's one of those moments where people who have been on the sidelines are starting to be too scared of waiting too long. and they're looking at each other, and everyone's realizing that there is buying demand. They saw that there is the fact that when this ETF does come out, there will be a candle. I think some of the fundamental buyers, potentially some of the macro guys, we've seen some really strong traditional finance people backing Bitcoin. Larry Fink and Paul Tudor Jones, part two. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a confluence right now, and it is making the ETH BTC ratio look. It looks like a DWF coin.
Just on that note, for like Jordy and Thicky, the expert traders here, like, does what's happening now make the ETF more likely to be sell the news, right? Like, the market's pricing this in that this is, quote unquote guaranteed, or there's a 90% chance this happens in January or February or something like that. And we've already had the news, right? It turned out to be fake, but we had it. Does this make the next time it's announced, when maybe it's real, more likely to be sell the news?
I don't know what Thicky thinks. I don't think it's sell the news. I think it's just it can overshoot. Previously, it was at 26, 27. If it goes to 30, 32, it's okay. Like, it's not overshooting. Now it's already going to be at 30, and then it goes to 35. It can short term overshoot, but I don't think it's going to be a sell the news type of event. What do you think, Thicky?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it increases the odds that it overshoots. Now that people are already positioned for it, I don't think people are going to sell until the inflows come in. So in between the time it gets approved and like it actually starts trading, I could see it just easily grinding up.
I think the first time we see somebody talk about ETH ETF as being the next step after the Bitcoin one does get approved. And I'm not talking about like the bankless guys. We need like someone non ETH maxi to talk about it. But that'll be the signal, I think, to put the bottom in on the ETH BTC chart, which we can take a look at it here. And I'm a bit surprised of it's tapping on 0.05. Yeah,
If you go to ultrasound.money, we're basically like, if you look at on-chain activity, we're basically back to post FTX levels. Like, no one's using a chain, right? I mean, maybe you can argue that, people are using L2s, people are using other chains, but I don't really believe in that. I just think that on-chain lacks users, and in this environment, the ETH is deflationary meme is no longer there. Of course, like, ETH inflation is lower than Bitcoin inflation, but it's, if Ether is community money, like, the narrative weakens a little bit. And last time we had this level of on-chain activity, Ether was at like $1,200, $1,300. I wouldn't be that surprised if it gets down there, but I think buyers will step in. I think people think that 2024 generally going to be a bullish year. I think that's where consensus is. So I'm not like doomering ETH, and I still like ETH, but I kind of like just view it as, yeah, like maybe it just suffers for the next couple of weeks. I'm curious, like, where do you guys think Bitcoin dominance goes from here? It's like, yeah, 52%. It's kind of on a rampage. Where do you guys think that it's going to top?
I haven't heard that name in a long time. Bitcoin dominance.
Yeah, I was pulling up the chart myself just to take a look.
It's multi-year high.
Yeah, it's chatting up, and this is with stablecoin market cap too. So
Yeah, I just don't like this metric because there's more and more coins that you have ETH and you have everybody else, but then the everybody else gang, ETH is like able to keep punching, but then you guys got like more and more random coins joining the other side every week. There's like more ICOs, so I don't love the dominance percentage, and but it is saying something that it's at this like multi-year high. And to your point about ETH, we're around a year after the anniversary of the merge, and I was quite outspoken as being contrarian against some of the narratives at the time. I did say that ETH was going to end up being inflationary forever because the increase in staking was going to increase the supply, and then the L2 dominance starting to increase would also move activity there. So Gwei is low, issuance is higher. We have more and more people staking. And also, I had said that staking yield would be like 5, and then 4, and then 3, and at some point we'll get to 2. I think that's kind of like where it bottoms. Um, those narratives I think were good for building hype, but ultimately the community money needs to decide for itself what form it takes. And I'm still bullish ETH. I just think those old narratives were a bit over the top.
Yeah, I've been harboring this like theory that all of the scaling for Ether could be bearish price, right? Especially with 4844. Like if we didn't have any L2s and people were still using Ethereum today, like presumably ETH would be deflationary right now with no L2s. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean though that not creating L2s is more bullish, right? Like there's this weird balance between, do we want a lot of users with cheap fees and scalability, but if the fees are cheap, if we can scale, well then of course ETH is going to be inflationary. It's sort of like ETH is now in this like deadly middle zone. So like Solana is in this ultra cheap, very inflationary side. Bitcoin, or rather Ether, used to be on this like deflationary side, but now ETH has moved to this middle ground, which generally, like I feel like in business, you don't want to be, right? Like you want to be on one side of the coin. You want to be um, very inflationary, very cheap, or deflationary, low issuance, but like expensive and not scalable, like BTC or ETH, how it used to be. So yeah, it's a very interesting spot to be. I'm curious if they're able to thread the needle with Ethereum.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we can pull up actually. I made this point exactly a year ago, and you can look at some of the memes that I used to describe exactly this point that you're making. That it's sort of in the middle, and it needs to choose what it is. Yeah, to your point, Justin. This was a meme I made a year ago during the merge, kind of foreseeing that potentially this, ETH would get stuck in this middle zone, and it says, Confucius say, be a great Batman or a great Buddha. Don't try to be both at once. And then for 4844, which is something that, it's still, we don't know when the date's going to be, but, the cheaper gas gets on L2s and the less they have to pay to check in, you know, it starts to make a different economy, and those apps become more valuable. So everyone's kind of being more bullish on the app layer 2 tokens. Um, their margins will be better potentially, and ultimately, this is not necessarily bullish for ETH in terms of the gas case, right? So the community case is maybe still interesting.
Yeah, this strikes me as like there's a conflict of interest, right, between Ethereum core developers and Ethereum holders or Ether holders, right? Like governance happens entirely off chain for Ethereum, for better or worse. Like a lot of people think that's good. Like I think it is probably too, because I don't necessarily trust Ether holders to vote. But presumably, like there would be a lot more conversation about if 4844 is the right path forward, if like trying to throw all of our resources at L2 is the right path forward, because it just, like to your point, it just changes the economics, right? Like we have to increase demand, by orders of magnitude at the L2 layer than we would have had to on L1. And like I'm surprised that no one has talked about the potential bearishness for the price of Ether if 4844 goes through, which it will. It seems like no one's talking about it. There's been no dialogue with the community, and um, you know Ethereum is decentralized, right? But it's a centralized party that's actually doing the development, which a lot of people don't realize or talk about.
I'm curious to see what's going to happen, and I think we have quite a few of these situations in Ethereum where they're not win-win. Like one side's going to win, one side's going to lose. And another example is the proposal to increase the maximum ETH from 32 per validator to like 1,024, which sounds great. From a user standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. You don't have to like keep rebalancing your ETH and running a ton of validators. But then the whole validator industry, which is quite a large, contingent in the ETH world, we'll only need one validator for every 80 validators or 50 validators, whatever it is. So, they won't be able to have a, huge business anymore. So we'll see what, wins out when it comes to these win versus lose dynamics.
Yeah, it's we talk about how all of these chains are decentralized, and I mean to some degree they are, right? Like I do believe like our ether won't be seized, right? But the four of us all have like a relatively decent side, like following in the community and like a voice. We have more of a voice than the average person. But if any one of us wanted to sort of throw out EIP 4844, like push that narrative, not that that's what I want to do, like we would get nowhere, right? Like you have to be in that small core dev circle, and you have to be really in the know to even have a voice there, which is super interesting. Same is true with every other chain, with BTC, Solana, whatever you're looking at. But yeah, it's interesting.
I think they know that there's the foundation side, which is maybe like less people but very idealistic, and then there's the users that are, maybe we're seeing that now with Lido, where users like Lido, it makes sense, but then the pristine foundation is kind of pushing back on the risks of the protocol, and we're seeing some of those voices come out. And like you said, they're much more impactful than anybody else. Cool. Should we talk a little bit about the macro situation? I think that's one topic that our listeners have been asking about, and it is a very interesting time in macro. I haven't talked about macro in a while because it's sort of been in this range bound mode. I think now the moves are starting to be very large. I'm surprised every day I wake up and I see that overnight um, stocks are moving like, percents, 2, 3%. So volatility's picked up. It is usually like one up and one down. So people who are, you know, buying the dips and selling the rips have been doing well on equities. But when it comes to bonds, it's completely the opposite. It's just been one way down. And if you listen to any person in the know, they're all saying that the concern right now for the economy and for everything else is ultimately the treasury market. Do you guys follow the treasury market at all, or is this a kind of like a macro?
Yeah, I mean, I follow it loosely. Obviously, the rates staying higher for longer, but like maybe that's only like like shorter term treasuries, like 1 month to let's say 1 or 2 years, around 5%. So like it's a sign that the market thinks we're going to be higher for longer. But then recently, like the longer, like the 20-year treasury, the 30-year treasuries, like just chatting up to 5%. Like, do you think that's mainly due to the market pricing in future growth and higher like inflation expectations, or do you just think that it's because there's like just no demand for these longer term treasuries?
There's some demand, but there's more supply, and the supply keeps coming. And I think the whole approach towards containing inflation has been wrong from day one. And I've been very outspoken this was never going to work. Basically, you're giving rich people who have billions of dollars 5% yield, and that's a lot of money. I mean, with Mantle, we're starting to like get this yield on the treasury, and we're just looking at like the daily number that we're getting is just absurd. And I can only imagine the billionaires out there and the institutions that are getting 5% yield. That's not going to like fix inflation ultimately. It's going to reduce maybe like people getting mortgages, and that's not going to make people happy either. But the ultimate solution to inflation was always going to be austerity slash tax hikes, and ideally corporate tax hikes. That's the reverse of what happened that caused the inflation, and you put the genie back in the bottle that way. Trying to do this like rate stuff, we're seeing Argentina has they just increased their rate, rate hike from 95% to 130%. And I'm not making this up. It's at 130. Theoretically, if raising rates was going to fix inflation, they would have fixed it by now. So I don't know that that's the right solution.
Yeah, Lynn Alden, I really enjoy listening to her takes there. And I know she, early days in the Fed hiking, she shared this quote, and I'm not sure if she came up with it or if she heard it elsewhere, but when your debt is higher than GDP, when you raise rates, it's actually inflationary, and you're creating this inflationary loop because, like to your point, you're paying out, everyone's getting more money when you raise rates. It's not as though everyone's getting less.
No, she nailed it on the head, and I think me and her were both like the only two warning people a year ago that this was not going to be the solution. And I think now it's playing out, and we will eventually need something else to happen. And the first sign that we're getting into trouble is not the short end, but it's the back end. So the fact that the Fed is losing control, I kind of put out a tweet thread talking about this because it is worth everyone's attention noticing that the Fed itself, they're starting to put some quotes up here. So the Dallas Fed president said they might not need to raise rates again. And uh, it's not because inflation numbers are better, but it's because they're seeing that rates are going up by themselves in the back of the curve. They can't control it. So, I'm saying that the Fed is starting to poo poo in the Pampers because they're babies. They don't know what they're doing, but they're starting to get scared, and they're realizing they need to maybe pause and not keep raising rates and try to fix the back end of the curve. Ultimately, if nothing happens on the austerity side and nothing happens on the tax hike side, I think what we're going to see is what happened in Japan just a couple days ago, which is they will start having to do operations and buy bonds because nobody else is buying them, and they keep supplying them because the the national debt keeps going up. Uh, Ultimately, that means yield curve control, and that is very bad for the dollar, and quite good for alternatives to the dollar, which hopefully crypto is one of.
Jordy, can I ask you, what you've outlaid now, is that your base case, or is that just, like a very plausible, quote unquote, bad outcome that we could see? Because in my mind, like the base case for everyone really should be that like things continue on and it's fine, right? Like the dollar is actually strong. There really isn't an alternative unless you talk about gold, crypto, etc., which is not mainstream yet. And so, like for me, it seems like you would have to think that like the base case is, um, rates end up coming down. We settle into like normal market behavior. Yes, our debt is ballooning and we're not making as much money with tax receipts, but like there's no, I've heard Chamath say this on All In. There's no like turning point where debt to GDP is just so bad that everything collapses. So, do you think this is an imminent threat? This time is different. Something's changing here. There's really a paradigm shift, or is your base case actually we're fine, things are going to chug along and whatnot?
I think it's more likely than not that this happens, but it's 60-40. So it's not an overwhelming base case. I think that the next steps are quite overwhelming in the sense of the Fed will very, very soon start changing their tone, not only talking about stopping raises, but trying to say that, yeah, maybe like it won't be for longer. Maybe like we will cut at some point because they'll try to bring the back end of the curve down by bringing the front down, and they'll try to just shift the whole thing. But if they start to lose control and it steepens, that will basically, increase the chances of a recession massively. And the next step is probably stimulus, buying bonds, QE, and we've seen QE. Even the youngsters among us, including the guys co-hosting with me, have seen QE a couple times now. It's not going to be a new paradigm for even young investors, I think. So we know what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, it's also their desire, right? Like I think the Fed wants to do everything they can to stimulate the economy. Like they don't actually want to be higher for longer, right? They're trying to find every excuse to not do that, it seems like.
Yeah, definitely. In his heart of hearts, Jay Powell is a dove. He can talk the talk, but when there's going to be a reason to change direction, he will do it very quickly. And I do think that we're in for some volatility in bonds, but also in the broader market after having quite a quiet period for the last year or so. Apart from the Silicon Valley Bank, again, like they smothered as soon as that started to appear.
Like, what do you think this means for BTC and gold? Because like in theory, like on paper, like it should be bullish, right? Like, do you think that the big macro gurus are going to start to price this in and start to allocate more to BTC? Like maybe 1 to 3% allocations. Even Larry Fink is going on TV saying, yeah, like Bitcoin is a flight to safety, which you know, coming from his mouth is pretty insane. But I guess he's also thinking about like all the management fees that he can make from like the eventual ETF that might be approved next year.
Yeah, I think the mid curvers are going to win out for a while, so Bitcoin is going to do really well. Um, I say mid curvers because there are issues with Bitcoin and the distribution of Bitcoin and the long term security of Bitcoin. Everything else has to get sorted out. But in the short term, it's just hard money. And all this FTX stuff creates, again, like more fodder for this. This is Bitcoin. It's not crypto. It's different. It's just a singular commodity. Um, I'm less sympathetic to that than I used to be, but I think that it will have its moment in the sun, which we're already starting to see.
Are you ready to say there? Or I guess I'll pose this to everyone. Are folks here ready to say that the bear market is almost over, if not already over, for crypto specifically?
I think there's too much volatility on the macro side in the horizon. Um, and I think all assets can have sell offs based on broader market issues. So I think China still has a real estate crisis to resolve. I think the US is the interest rate crisis. I think there's wars going on. We can have sell offs. So I don't think we're quite out of the woods, but there is, sprinklings of hope starting to appear.
Yeah, and I think Thiccy said this in like a tweet, and feel free to give more color. But whenever some altcoin sells off and people want to buy the dip, they have to sell something to like fund those purchases, right? And if people are using Ether to fund those purchases, then maybe Ether like BTC just goes down. Like, is that still your view, Thiccy, or like do you think that like eventually um, the future is bright enough to just say like screw it, like just starts just accumulating and like holding? Like where are you at on that?
Yeah, I had this tweet last night that said I thought the fixed income markets were similar to the altcoin markets, and that there's just a lot of issuance the next few months, and there's essentially no buyer, which will be like immense sell pressure on ETH in the next few months. I really agree with Jordy's takes in that, like, I do think time wise, the end of the bear market should be soon, maybe in the next 6 to 18 months. But like path wise, like depending on how events play out, we could easily go down before we go up. So even though the bear market might be ending soon, it might not be like clear just to go long from here and just mark the bottom.
It's very tough to be an ETH bull now. Honestly, even just having this conversation with you guys, right? Like, it's very clear that if the narrative is BTC ETF approval, if the narrative is endless money printing, inflation, market turmoil, like the flight to quality truly is BTC. And, like conversations like this sort of make me re-question my thesis, which is more ETH denominated, of course. Maybe that means the ETH BTC bottom is in. I don't know, but having this conversation and then being at the Coinbase Venture Summit and hearing um, chatter from very notable people about being more so BTC bulls, it's having me question my thesis. But I think it's a little too late to swap back now.
Here's a way that I thought about it this morning as I was, waking up and having some shower thoughts. It feels to me that right now, so Bitcoin is the sign of like non-crypto natives getting involved, and Ethereum is like the crypto natives getting, you know, richer and increasing in numbers and doing more stuff. And I do think that the number of people that are looking to actually do stuff on chain and are more Ethereum based and Ethereum pilled like yourself, Justin, um, they're still waiting for more good apps. We saw Friend Tech. Okay, it was fun for a little bit. Not hearing so much about it right now. Um, there needs to be more done and better UI. And I think potentially, yield bearing stable coins and better yields and kind of that savings account mode is one thing. I think, we'll talk to Thicky about gaming in a little bit and see if that's another one. But ultimately, it's kind of quiet on that front. And meanwhile, the normies are starting to eye Bitcoin again, and that's sort of like dominating the ratio right now.
Look, can I just ask very quickly, if you're me and you're mostly ETH, do you think it's too late to swap? Is the ratio too bad now, or do you think this is just getting started?
I think we're towards the end, and I think that once the ETF comes out, a couple days later, people will start looking for the next thing, and the next thing is going to be the Ethereum ETF. So that will probably mark the bottom. So we could see a little bit more until this news finally hits, but it's a scary ratio already. Yeah, even I'm a bit surprised, and I was expecting a little bit of a move, but not this much.
All right, I'm holding strong. You heard it here first.
What about you, Thicky?
I think that there could be another 10 to 15% downside in ETH um, just because there's so many people selling alts, and a lot can happen in 85 days. I do agree with Jordy that like the ETF approval on Gen 10 or maybe a few weeks after will mark the bottom. But like as you can see, like things moved really fast in ETH already, and they can continue to move that fast. I think, especially with all this alt supply coming to the market.
10 to 15% is nothing. I was talking more 20, 30, 40, 50 would be something I'd care about. But to push back on your, people swapping out of alts, like when they're swapping out of alts, they're actually, you have to buy ETH to do so generally, right? Like maybe on a SEX, you can go straight from alt to BTC. But for most people, like when you sell your alt, you're actually buying ETH, right?
I guess the unlocks I'm talking about is mainly focused on the team and the investors that are and they're just going to sell their alts for dollars, and someone needs to buy these alts, and it's going to come from somewhere else to do it.
Got it. That makes sense.
We are starting to see the VC market also be quite dry on new funding. We're not seeing that many announcements. The projects that I know that are looking for funding are finding it harder than ever. And there's a few sources of new flow into the money. I would say there's three main ones. So we have like retail people that are just coming to Binance and whatever other centralized exchange and just depositing money, and that kind of enters the environment. That's good for all coins, including altcoins mainly. Then you have institutional money. There's two types of institutional money though. So there's the macro money, and that is mainly like ETH, BTC, and probably more on the BTC side. And then you have the VC money. And VCs go out there, they raise $1 billion from Harvard endowment, and whoever else is looking to diversify their multi-billion portfolios, and they generally are investing in projects that are good for ETH, right? Like they're good for the doers, not for the kind of money holders. And it's a time that that pipe is quiet. And after FTX, I mean, this is one of SBF's gifts to the Ethereum community. His parting gift was just drying up the VC funnel. That I think we're seeing the effects of that because all these teams have people to pay. There's mouths to feed. There's tons of developers that have to spend money on rent and travel and going to conferences and getting tables at Marquee. Very important that last. I mean, I still can't believe
The
the
last
amount.
one.
And but like Vicky said, somebody has to fund the alt buying, and somebody has to fund the champagne buying, and it's sometimes coming out of our coins.
The day of reckoning will come. I was talking about HFT is like the first sort of canary hash flows token in the coal mine. They're doing like 91% unlock of their circulating supply. It's only like 50 million bucks, but their circulating is only 50 anyway. And in the past week or so, it's down like 30, 40%. So I do think like any alt with upcoming supply in the next few months is gonna face that problem of like the 30-year treasury market, just no buyers, down only.
Wow. Yeah. It's
It's
crazy.
like TLT. Yeah.
Like TLT, yeah, TLT esque.
What do you think? What do you think about gaming, Thicky? There's been this interesting launch recently with Big Time. Have you been following this?
Yeah, big time. They raised like 20 million in 2021, and they've been in beta for a while. And they just announced their token last week, and they announced like the preseason of their game. So I was playing a good amount of big time over this past week just to sort of like test it out. And it's actually like it's a step above the games of old with like Jewel and Decentraland and Sandbox. Like, those are actually just like complete garbage. This one's actually like you could sink in 10, 20 hours before it gets stale.
The video title is worst NFT game ever, so
I
must not be that
mean,
good. It must not be that good.
it's like Unreal Engine. It's like a if you played an MMORPG like kind of like a Guild Wars 2 or World of Warcraft. It's like it's like decent. It's like
It looks like a real game.
yeah, it is a real game. It's a real game.
So how is crypto involved? Like, are the in-game items NFTs? Is the currency that you use in the game a token? Like, how does it play into crypto?
Yeah, so their idea is that like they want to do play to earn. The CEO is the CEO of Decentraland, so you can deposit
Oh,
4 tokens. You can deposit ETH, BTC, USDC, and you can deposit Mana, which is the Decentraland token, and you can use that to buy in-game items. And you need those in-game items in order to earn essentially the big time token that you can sell. Um, and it launched. They launched it with some pretty interesting tokenomics. It was like a billion FTB with like 30 million circ. So it actually worked out to where like you could earn like $30 an hour playing this game. Um, it's been quickly being sold off though. Right now, it's maybe you can earn $15 an hour playing this game. But yeah, that's how it's supposed to set up. Like you can actually make some money playing this game.
Is this how you're funding your bills?
um, Well, I funded it by shorting it.
Stuff out
It's
here,
like
yeah.
it's a super interesting grift because the investors got no token. The investors get equity. And the token, like there is no actually real reason to buy the token. And when you buy in-game items, you don't spend token to buy them. You spend real world dollars, which accrues to the equity holders. So I think it's a really clever way of enriching equity holders at the expense of token holders, as we've seen this week. Very common trend.
If this game picks up, though, it doesn't matter that the token's completely useless because all tokens pretty much are completely useless, right? If this thing is the next thing, that the token number is going to go up.
I think it's like at the weird middle ground where it's like it's not actually a fun game. Nobody will play the game just to play the game. They will only play it to make the token to earn the token. It's like an okay game, but like you really can't play this for more than 20 hours.
I see. And the token's called Big Time, right? It's just like it's just such a non-serious branding of a token.
It's kind of hilarious.
Wasn't this
Yeah.
like listed on Coinbase? Like this pumped because it was listed
It
on
was.
Coinbase, right?
So
Yeah.
Binance.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, Binance as well. All the perps. We've been making
Oh, it has
fun of it a lot
perps.
in our
Okay.
group chats. Yeah. That's perps. We've been calling it small time or tiny time every time the price goes down.
So have you been like shorting this? Like, are you just like playing the game, earning tokens, dumping it?
I was short earlier, but I'm not in the position anymore.
Hopefully, there's more life to the gaming market than what we've seen so far.
That's like the issue, right? With these games, it's like crypto. Like we were talking about this on our podcast earlier, Pikey, is that like crypto is already a game. So like, why play a game on top of crypto? It seems like it's yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand. Yeah, like crypto is such a whole new experience. Like playing on chain, buying meme coins, farming. Like it's just like a financial game. And I have zero motive to play big time or whatever. Uh, yeah, it like doesn't really make sense to me. I feel like it's more of like a VC narrative because VCs like just sink money in here, so they're trying to like push it. But I think in practice, like no one really cares.
It's so complicated as a game as well. Crypto is challenging, lovely strategy game. If you're trying to play this, meta narrative of figuring out what coins to buy and sell, it's so easy to make the right prediction and say, okay, obviously Sandbox is not worth $5, or obviously Sui and Aptos are not worth 5 billion FTV. And then if you don't have the financial means to keep a short on for a forex and wait, the inevitable 12-month timeline for it to go down, you still lose. So it creates an extra layer where you don't have to just predict the end goal, but you have to navigate the path as well. And it's challenging. It's fun, but not for everybody.
Yeah, we're all degens here with insane risk tolerances.
Speaking of degens, shall we go to our past of the week segment and see if Taiki's gonna maintain his incredible winning streak?
Oh no.
Yeah, you guys need to try harder, man. All right, so this is a long pasta, but I thought it was great. I guess I have to read this out loud for our non-YouTube watchers. But this is from Gwart. Vitalik, Hayden, and Justin Drake were walking one day when they noticed a $100 bill on the sidewalk. Vitalik picked it up and said, "We should use this to build public goods and core infrastructure." Hayden nodded his head. "Agreed. We can put this money to good use." Justin Drake smiled and asked Vitalik for the bill. He obliged. "See that homeless man down there?" He gestured roughly 50 yards down the sidewalk to a homeless man with a sign and a little hat with a few dollar bills and some change in it. "Watch this." They walked over, and Justin appeared as though he was going to give the man money, but instead pulled out a lighter and lit the $100 bill on fire. The homeless man looked confused, as did Hayden and Vitalik. Justin pointed at the hat with the small bills. "That money right there is now more scarce because I took $100 out of the total circulating supply." The homeless man still looked perplexed. "Why couldn't I just have the money if you were going to burn it?" "Well," Justin paused, "it was never yours to begin with." The homeless man smiled and responded, "That actually makes a lot of sense. Thank you for making the money I do have more valuable." Vitalik clapped, but in a weird way, putting his elbows together and sort of slapping his hands back and forth. Anyways, the homeless man later died of starvation. The state of ETH. What do you guys? What do you guys think?
He's not wrong.
It's funny that that's like exactly. It's similar to what we were talking about earlier. Yeah.
I love the Vitalik clapping card. It's like he just like does this. There's like videos on YouTube where he just like claps like this. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love Vitalik, but yeah, I love his demeanor.
Vitalik posted saying that he's not the somebody that sells ETH for getting money, that he only donates it, and then those people sell it because they need to, fund whatever charity or thing they're doing. But it's sort of equivalent, right? Like whether he's cashing out or he's just dispersing coins to people to cash out, it has the same selling pressure ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, is there a difference if he sells it or if he donates it to his LLC to buy a house? I mean, it's the same sell pressure.
Yeah.
Damn,
Is it
Justin.
just a joke? I'm sure that's not happening. Yeah, that was a good one, Taiki. I don't know if I can top that, but I have one pulled up here, so I'll just share this one. So this is from Fubar, awesome account on Twitter, and he said, "Remember when Litecoin tweeted that it was going to be sold in Walmart?" And for me, this was like the peak of the bull market. I remember when Litecoin pumped like crazy on this fake news. Everybody shorted it, and they were right. It was completely fake, and um, it sort of reminds me of like what happened with the fake BTC ETF news. So I had like a similar experience when I was announcing Astaria's fundraise. You go through like the PR process to announce it. And actually, anyone can submit any PR they want through some sources like Cision, Presswire. If you're familiar, you can Google it. And you just pay like $900. And if you have a press release, they just send it out to everyone, like Reuters, Yahoo News. Thousands of places pick it up, right? Like it's so easy to disseminate fake news and it really never gets verified. So be careful what you read out there. But I thought this tweet was funny and it brought me back to a much simpler time in the crypto space.
There's a weird power that the media has because unless we coordinate and then we share information and we need some centralized places that we're all looking at and dispersing information, you know, we don't function as well. So we end up putting a lot of power into not just news outlets, but even like individual tweet accounts, and not to mention, unfortunately, all these YouTubers that are not us, but like the other guys, the BitBoys and those guys that end up having. Naval talks about how there's the money game and the status game, and some people just try to get power by playing political games and trying to not create and build a business, but sort of just being a power in a position of influence. And it is always better to be the one that is actually creating economic value rather than the one that's playing the influence game. And this media thing reminds me of the same thing where everyone might be following, Cointelegraph, and it's not because they respect them because they've earned, some thought leadership or something. It's purely because we're relying on them for this other type of game where we're dispersing information, and things can go wrong quickly. And it happened in this case.
So I know we do what we talk about ETH being community money. Is this our community pasta, the Cointelegraph intern getting fired?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you
I
see the
remember that tweet.
screenshots afterwards of like the Telegram chat where they source the information from? It was just some like random dude with the Pepe PFP just like posted a joke headline and the Cointelegraph guys were like, "Is this real?"
Yeah, it's like the guy responds, "Well, it must be real because the price is moving." It's like, yeah, you tweeted it, and now the price is moving. It's like the elephant, like having his own dong. It's just like,
Oh yeah.
oh yeah, well, moving, so it's real, and then they just keep repeating it. Vicky, how about your pasta? What do you have?
Oh yeah, it's a Dan Spencer tweet. Yeah, so I guess I'll read the tweet for the podcast listeners. It says, when no millennials or Zoomers can afford a house and job prospects are limited, don't be surprised when PEs for zeitgeisty tech stocks and crypto are going vertical, even with higher rates. Interest rates don't matter to millennials and Zoomers. They have no savings and little prospect to ever have them. Even big tech friends are living paycheck to paycheck. All that matters is swing for the fences, a portfolio optimized for the Instagram lifestyle. That is actually quite rational. Spend more time in Asia, you'll understand the crushing paradox for young people. So, I mean, I do think this like is a prevailing sentiment amongst like the younger generation is like, if you don't have 10, 20 million liquid, then like why, that's like there's like a weird like discontinuity with like the value function for these people. Rather not grind at a 9 to 5 for like 20 years in order to make it, they'd rather just make it, quickly. So it does like affect the sort of behavioral patterns of what these people invest in, and like uh, yeah. So I thought it was a very good commentary on the sort of trends of the investment mindset that we've been seeing lately.
And also just looking at this price to earnings ratio chart that he posted of the top 7 companies in the S&P, which are basically just tech companies and everyone else. And like the disparity is insane, right? So for like 7 companies in the S&P 500, their PE ratio is an absurd 45. And for all the rest, it's like at 19. It's absolutely insane, the disparity we're seeing in, all of the economic gain is going to just a few players.
Yeah, the passive flows really help those large stocks, and it ends up becoming like a self-reinforcing cycle because they just have more money to maintain monopolies. But Vance is right. Even though I have to say, like for pasta, it's not as catchy. It's much more of a philosophical tweet, but it is correct. I recently tapped into the Zoomer market and talked to some 20-year-olds to understand what's going on out there. And I asked, like, are you interested in crypto? It's like, yeah, interested in crypto. Oh, what kind of crypto? And I'm waiting to hear about ETH or BTC, and it's like, no, my 18-year-old friend made his own coin, and then like his family put money into like his random Ponzi coin that he made, and then it went down, and it got hacked, and everybody lost money. So it's just this is what's going on. And then I ask if I was like, oh, that scene in The Big Short, and they're like, what's The Big Short? They don't even know like the basic kind of stuff that we've lived through over the last 15 years. So yeah, they don't care. They don't care about that. They care about Instagram and great take by Vance, although not as catchy as a quote.
It's kind of like the bull case for meme coins, right? Like people just want to get rich quick, so they just like buy Doge. They don't care.
There is no like bull case for meme coins. Like there's
They're all meme coins, in fact.
Yeah, like Uniswap is a meme coin, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at like January this year with Aptos, and you had Koreans being like one APT equals one apartment. I feel like that's what he was referencing when like talking about the youth in Asia. Is like we make fun of them for being degens and just buying them random shit just because price goes up. But like, I think I see that trend happening just globally.
Yeah, and speaking of Koreans, that's gonna be my pasta of the week. So I run into this article, and do you guys know what burger coins are?
like US coins
Yes,
or what?
USDC coins.
So
What the fuck
here's
is
my pasta of the week, and I use Google Translate here, so this may not be exactly the Korean language, but I think it is because there's a picture of a burger next to all these like coins. So basically, the Koreans, the regulators are starting to get involved, and the politicians, because what they call burger coins, which is like foreigners, Americans, let's say, are coming in and listing, Steven. I'm not sure which one Steven is. We have Avalanche.
It's probably Stepin.
Yeah, it's stepping.
We have Aptos and
Oh my
Shiba Inu.
god.
But basically, the Korean regulators are angry that the burger coins are listing and then going down 90% and losing locals their hard-earned Korean won. So this is pretty epic, and I don't know. I don't think Aptos is gonna come back for these guys, but kudos for Burger Coin. The Koreans crushed it here.
The last quote is funny because it says, all of these coins, without exception, have fallen for the past 2 years. That is also true, just to be clear, for every coin in the entire space. So it's not just us burgers, it's everyone.
The article cited DeFi Squared's Twitter on the Sui stuff, how like they were um, just any potential investigation of them selling stake rewards. I wonder if they've read my Twitter because I've referenced many times. Oh yeah, these American VCs are just trying to fleece Korean retail and take money from them. Like I'm curious if Korean regulators have been reading Twitter, but I think Joey's tackle adjustment might have won him the game.
Yeah, I really like the burger coin pasta. Yeah.
Okay, good. Last minute information. We take the crown away from Taiki. Got to get a week on it now.
We should get it. We need a trophy, and we just start mailing it to each other for each week.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we do an NFT. You just send it to each other.
Oh, okay.
It's not a bad idea.
A little bit better for global warming to use some.
Yes.
Maybe we can spend some ETH gas just to revitalize the ETH economy. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining, and see you next time.